Welcome, dear listeners, to Cafe Tales, where the night's shadows whisper secrets long buried. Tonight, we invite you into the grand halls of Hargrove Hall, a bastion of elegance now, stained by treachery, written as an homage, and in the style of Agatha Christie. The dinner party murder draws you into a world where a storm rages outside, but the true tempest brews within a dining table set for deceit, where every glance hides a motive. Hercule Poirot, that maestro of the little grey cells, stands ready to pierce the veil of deception. But before we step into this labyrinth of intrigue, I must ask a small favour. If this tale of mystery stirs your curiosity, consider subscribing to our nocturnal circle and dropping a comment below to share where in the world you're listening. From tonight, now settle in, dim the lights, and let the shadows speak. Chapter 1. The Gathering Storm. The London mansion of Sir Reginald Hargrove stood like a monument to opulence in the heart of Mayfair, its towering columns and gilded facade gleaming under the dusky sky. To Hercule Poirot, stepping from his cab onto the cobblestone drive, it was a vision of grandeur, marble and gold leaf harmonizing with the faint scent of wealth that lingered in the air. The windows glowed with the promise of an evening both elegant and perhaps perilous. Poirot adjusted his impeccable black tie and ran a gloved finger along the edge of his pristine moustache. The invitation to this dinner party had arrived with little explanation, a curt note in Sir Reginald's bold hand. A matter of some delicacy requires your attention. Do come. Curiosity, that most persistent of Poirot's companions, had compelled him to accept. The butler, a stiff figure in starched livery, met him at the door with a bow. "Welcome, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Reginald is expecting you. The guests are in the drawing-room." Poirot followed through a foyer adorned with treasures and monas jostling for space with a brooding Caravaggio. His eye lingered on a small, sorrowful portrait tucked among the masters, its subject gazing out with an air of quiet despair. Curious, Poirot thought a note of discord in this symphony of splendour. Double doors swung open to reveal the drawing room, where crystal chandeliers bathed the small assembly in golden light. At the heart of the gathering stood Sir Reginald Hargrove, a man whose very presence commanded attention, tall and silver-haired, with a suit tailored to perfection. He was in his late 50s, yet carried the vigour of youth, tempered by the steel of experience. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, surveyed the room with an appraiser's precision. "Ah, Poirot." Sir Reginald's voice cut through the murmur of conversation as he strode forward. "You honour us. I hope London's fog didn't dull your little grey cells." Poirot smiled, appreciating the gesture. "Not at all, mon ami. The fog, it sharpens the mind. N'est-ce pas?" Sir Reginald's smile was thinner flicker that failed to warm his gaze. "Art is my lifeblood, Poirot, and my trade. Come, let me introduce you." He gestured to a man nearby, clutching a brandy glass with a grip that suggested more than casual enjoyment. "Mr. Archibald Fincher, fellow collector, though not, I fear, my equal in the game." Finch, a wiry figure with a pinched face and hair retreating from his brow, offered a tight smile. "Sir Reginald does enjoy his jests. We've crossed swords over many a canvas." Poirot inclined his head. "Enchant, Monsieur Finch." He noted the brittleness in Finch's tone and the restless way he adjusted his cufflinks. A rival, then, and one with a grudge. Before Finch could reply, a younger man approached, his cheeks flushed and his tie askew. "You've always loved an audience, father," he said, his voice carrying a hint of bitterness. Sir Reginald's expression darkened. "Charles, My boy, it's mere banter. Don't be so tiresome. Charles Hargrove, estranged son, Poirot deduced. Handsome in a rumpled way, his eyes darted with a restless energy. I'm not tiresome, he muttered. I only wish pardon. Me, came a clear, confident voice. A woman stepped forward, Miss Evelyn Blake, the journalist, with dark hair and green eyes that gleamed with curiosity. She tucked a pencil behind her ear as she spoke. Sir Reginald, I'd love your thoughts on that Caravaggio. Its history is rather debated, isn't it? Sir Reginald's smile tightened further. Miss Blake, ever the sleuth. We'll save that for after dinner, shall we? Poirot watched her drift away, her question hanging like a shadow. What does she'll know of that painting? He mused. His gaze shifted to a woman by the fireplace, Lady Beatrice Sinclair, a vision of poise in a gown that whispered of Paris fashion. Her jewels caught the light, yet her hands betrayed a faint tremor. Lady Beatrice, Sir Reginald called. Meet Monsieur Poirot, White, the figure in detective circles. She turned, her smile gracious but taut. I've heard you see through everyone, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot bowed. A pleasure, madame. And you enjoying the evening? Oh, quite, she replied, though her glance toward Sir Reginald suggested otherwise. Lastly, Poirot's eyes found a solitary figure by the window. Mr. Victor Marlowe, the business associate, a man of shadow and rumour. His back was to the room until Poirot approached. Monsieur Marlowe, Poirot said, offering a hand. Hercule Poirot, at your service. Marlowe turned. His face was a mask of indifference. Good evening, he replied, his tone clipped, and his handshake brief before he resumed his vigil at the glass. Poirot noted the contrast. Finch's restless hands against Marlowe's stillness, a study in opposites. As the guests moved toward the dining room, Poirot lingered, his mind cataloguing the undercurrents: rivalry, resentment, unease. Sir Reginald's delicate matter remained elusive, but the air crackled with possibility. The servants guided the party forward with hushed efficiency, their steps muffled on the thick carpets. Finch's shoulders tensed. Miss Blake's eyes darted. Lady Beatrice's tremor seemed to deepen. The dining room was a spectacular. Long mahogany table gleamed beneath a centerpiece of crimson orchids, their scent heavy in the air. Crystal glasses caught the candlelight, and silverware bearing the Hargrove family crest lay polished to perfection. Sir Reginald took the head. Poirot to his right, Charles to his left. Finch sat opposite, his eyes flickering over the company. Miss Blake, beside him, set her napkin with care, her pencil now discreetly tucked away. Lady Beatrice and Marlowe occupied the table's far end. Silence louder than words. The first course arrived, a delicate soup, and Poirot settled back, his little grey cells humming. Something brews here, he thought. But what? As the clock struck 9, its chime was swallowed by a sudden gust that set the candles trembling as if the night itself held its breath. Chapter 2. A toast to the host. The dining room of Sir Reginald Hargrove's Mayfair mansion gleamed with a brittle splendour, its opulence undercut by a creeping unease. Crimson orchids spilled from silver vases along the polished mahogany table, their scent cloying in the still air. Candlelight danced across crystal goblets, and the Hargrove crest etched into every spoon. Yet the grandeur felt stifling as, though the walls themselves pressed inward, beyond the tall rain-streaked windows, a storm howled, a relentless barrage of wind and water that severed the mansion from the world beyond, imprisoning its occupants in a gilded trap. Hercule Poirot, seated to Sir Reginald's right, observed the scene with the precision of a watchmaker. The soup course had vanished, replaced by roasted pheasant, its aroma mingling uneasily with the storm's damp breath, seeping through unseen cracks. The guests wore smiles as thin as the porcelain beneath their knives, their voices taut against the thunder's rumble. Sir Reginald rose, glass aloft, his presence dominating the table's head. "A toast," he boomed, his tone rich with authority, "to fine company, rare art, and the pleasures that wealth affords." Glasses met in a brittle chime. Poirot's keen gaze darted among them. Archibald Finch's hand quivered as it grazed. Miss Evelyn Blake's glass a tremor he masked with a cough. Miss Blake's lips curved upward, her eyes cold as jade. Lady Beatrice Sinclair clutched her wine-stem, her fingers tapping a staccato rhythm notes, perhaps, or a secret clawing to escape. Charles Hargrove, to his father's left, tossed back, his drink with a grimace, his knuckles whitening. "Father," Charles said, his voice a blade wrapped in silk, "why not regale us with tales of your Caravaggio, a masterpiece, or so you claim?" Sir Reginald's smile sharpened. "Patience, my boy, art is savoured, not gulped like cheap gin." Miss Blake tilted her head, a predator's grace in her motion. "Some whisper it's a forgery, Sir Reginald." "A pretty lie," he oiled. The table stilled, the storm's roar filled the void. Finch's fork clattered against his platter, flush creeping up his neck. Lady Beatrice's tapping ceased her, hand frozen mid-air. Victor Marlowe, who had been tracing raindrops on the window with his gaze, snapped his head toward the host, eyes narrowing. Sir Reginald's laugh rang hollow. Whispers, Miss Blake, the small change of smaller minds. "My Caravaggio is beyond reproach." Beyond reproach, Poirot mused, but not beyond envy or deceit. He noted the footman gliding past a wiry youth, pale as chalk, whose fingers lingered. A heartbeat too long as he set a chocolate mousse before Sir Reginald. A slip, or something more. Lady Beatrice, seeking refuge from the silence, turned to Poirot. "Monsieur, what drives a man to your profession to see guilt in every shadow?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Not guilt, madame, but truth. It hides in the twitch of a hand, the pause in a breath, the little things others overlook." Marlowe leaned forward, his voice velvet over steel. "And what little things catch your eye tonight, Monsieur Poirot?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Ah, the game is young. But the grey cells, they hum with possibility." The meal pressed on, each bite shadowed by the storm's fury. Poirot mapped the table in his mind, Sir Reginald at the helm, Charles and Poirot as reluctant lieutenants, Finch and Miss Blake opposite, their glances darting like fencing blades. Lady Beatrice and Marlowe at the far endilands of quiet amid the chatter. Then came the mousse's dark surface, glistening. Sir Reginald lifted his spoon, pausing to inhale its scent. "Exquisite," he murmured, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He took a bite and froze. His spoon clattered to the table. His face contorted, as though an invisible hand gripped his throat. A strangled gasp escaped him. He clawed at his collar, eyes bulging with terror. "Father," Charles leaped up, chair scraping the floor. "Sir." Reginald swayed, then crashed forward, his head striking the mousse with a sickening thud. Lady Beatrice's scream pierced the air. Finch shrank back. Miss Blake's napkin fluttered to the rugging, stained and crumpled. Poirot was at the body. In an instant, his calm, a beacon amid the chaos. He pressed fingers to Sir Reginald's neck. No pulse. Only stillness. "He is dead," he announced. rising with measured grace. Silence fell thick and suffocating, broken only by the storm's distant growl. Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face, Finch's, Paolo, Miss Blake's clenched jaw, Lady Beatrice's trembling lips, Marlowe's unreadable stare, Charles's ragged breaths. A poisoner sits among us, he thought, and the first thread of their web has snapped. Whose hand had spun it? Chapter 3. The little grey cells awake in the dining room, once aglow with Sir Harrow's opulence, now stood in disarray, its grandeur eclipsed by the grim shadow of death. Outside, the storm battered the mansion with relentless fury, its gusts clawing at the windows as if seeking entry. Within, the air thickened. The vast house shrank into a prison of flickering candlelight and unspoken dread. Hercule Poirot surveyed the scene with his piercing green eyes, his small, neat figure a stark contrast to the chaos. The guests sat as if carved from marble faces, betraying or concealing secrets. Charles Hargrove gripped the table's edge, his knuckles white, his gaze fixed on his father's crumpled form. Lady Beatrice. Sinclair's breath rasped her, fingers shredding a lace handkerchief. Victor. Marlowe's cool detachment unsettled the room, his eyes glinting with faint amusement. Archibald. Finch mopped his brow with a napkin, his hands unsteady. Miss Evelyn Blake's lips trembled, her journalist's curiosity warring with shock. Each plays their part, Poirot thought. But who wears a mask? Mise a mise, he declared, his voice a quiet blade. No one is to leave this room. A murder has been committed, and the stage must remain as it is. Charles's voice broke. Father dead. It can't be. We miss Charles, Poirot said, not unkindly. And we shall see that justice is done. Miss Blake whispered, poison, surely, the mousse. Her fingers brushed her ink-stained napkin, itching to document the nightmare. Poirot's moustache twitched a flicker of approval. Perhaps, mademoiselle, that is what the little grey cells will uncover. He turned to the butler, rigid by the door. Telephone the police, monsieur, and guard the exits. No one enters or leaves. The butler nodded and vanished into the gloom. Poirot knelt beside Sir Reginald, his gloved hands deliberate. The chocolate mousse smeared the plate victim's face, pressed into its ruin. A faint, bitter whifflements rose beneath the sweetness. Cyanide, Poirot deduced, swift and silent. The wine-glass stood untouched. The poison had struck through the dessert alone, but how had it found its mark? Standing, he studied the guests, noted Finch's eyes flick to the door, rabbit poised to bolt. Lady Beatrice murmured soundlessly. Was it prayer or fear? Charles's grief seemed laced with something sharper, anger, perhaps. Miss Blake traced her notebook's edge. Marlowe's calm felt like a challenge. Monsieur Marlowe, Poirot drawled, you thrive in this madness, don't you? Order from chaos, Monsieur Poirot, Marlowe replied, meeting his gaze. It is my gift. The butler returned, shadowed by James, the trembling footman who had served the dessert. Your name, Jen Arm? Poirot asked softly. James, sir. And did you see anything odd with Sir Reginald's mousse? No, sir. But there was a smudge on the rim. I meant to clean it, but he waved me off. Mercy, James, Poirot said, dismissing him with a nod. Sirens wailed faintly through the storm. Soon, Inspector Barnes stormed in, rain-soaked and grim. Poirot, he grunted. Another mess. What's the story? Cyanide, Inspector Poirot said, gesturing to the body. In the dessert, I suspect. Barnes scowled at the corpse. Nasty. These the suspects and witnesses. Poirot murmured. All had the chance. Statements, then. Barnes barked. Poirot, untangled this. I trust your nose for it. Poirot bowed slightly. The little grey cells are at work. As Barnes took charge, Poirot drifted to the sideboard. The untouched deserts gleamed. A silver spoon caught his eye misaligned, its bowl faintly stained. Intriguing, he thought, pocketing it discreetly, a slip or a lure. He approached Miss Blake, who scribbled furtively. What do you see, mademoiselle? She flinched. Details, monsieur. It's my craft. And what details stand out? He pressed gently. The smudge on Sir Reginald's platunique. And Mr. Finchy watched James like a hawk during the dessert. Watch Poirot's eyes gleamed. With what air eager she breathed. Too eager, a thread, Poirot mused. You have a sharp eye, mademoiselle. As Barnes questioned the guests, Poirot stepped into the corridor, drawn by a rustle. A whisper of movement. A shadow flitted around the cornigon in an instant. His lips curved faintly. Someone flees. But from what or to what? The storm. Rumbled Poirot, lingered the puzzle tightening in his mind. The trap is set, he reflected, and the quarry will not escape. Chapter 4. The first interviews. The dining room, once aglow with Sir Reginald Hargrove's opulence now, crouched beneath a pall of death, beyond the rain-lashed windows. The storm raged, ceaseless dirge of wind, that clawed at the panes and rattled the soul of the old house. Inside, the air thickened with unspoken accusations. The candlelight guttered fitfully, casting shadows that rose like spectres across the guests' taut faces. Inspector Barnes issued clipped commands his men a flurry of motion. But Hercule Poirot stood apart, his calm a beacon in the tempest. His keen eyes fixed on Charles Hargreave's paler and twitching fingers, bespoke a man wrestling with more than grief. Monsieur Charles, Poirot said, his voice a silken thread against the storm's snarl. Shall we step into the drawing room, a quieter place, I think, for the little grey cells to work? Charles gave a curt nod, his boots scuffing the parquet as he followed. The drawing-room offered a fragile reprieve, its drapes muting the rain's drumbeat, the hearth's embers hissing their last, but the night's dread clung like damp. Poirot sank into a chair, his compact frame radiating stillness. Your father, Monsieur Charles, he began, his tone as mild as a summer breeze. He was a man of great force, no one who shaped the lives around him. Perhaps not always gently. Charles prowled before the fire, his shadow, a restless giant on the wall. Force, he spat, a dictator, more like he gripped us, all me especially, with a fist of iron and a balance sheet. Every shilling accounted for, every failure tallied. Poirot tilted his head, a gleam in his eye. The balance sheet, you say? Money, then, was a frequent visitor to your quarrels. Charles froze, his jaw tightening. What are you getting at, Poirot? His laugh cracked like thin ice. Yes, we argued over funds. He kept me on a leash, and I've stumbled debts, bad choices, but poison. I'd sooner starve than stoop to that. Poirot's voice remained soft, yet it probed like a stiletto. And yet you sat at his elbow, enough to slip a little something onto his plate, perhaps a trifle unnoticed amid the clatter. Charles's hands balled into fists, veins stark against his skin. I cared for him, damn it, despite everything. We fought, Lord, how we fought, but I'd not harm him. I'd sooner carve out my own heart. Poirot noted the quiver in Charles's voice, the wild flick of his eyes toward the door. Guilt, or the panic of a man in tea? He wondered. Small thing, Monsieur Charles, he added lightly. The desert's course did it pass without incident? Charles scrubbed a hand across his face. Funny you ask. Father's mousse came late. James, that oaf of a footman, fumbled a spoon, dropped it right by the table. I barely noticed, busy stewing. Most interesting, Poirot murmured, rising with a nod. You have given me much to ponder, Monsieur Charles. As Charles trudged out, his frame bowed as if by unseen chains. Poirot's mind word. A dropped spoon, a delayed dish. Chance or the deft hand of design. He filed the thought away, turning to his next quarry. Lady Beatrice Sinclair swept into the drawing-room, her poise a polished mask, though her hands betrayed her from her pearls to her skirts, restless as caged birds. Poirot greeted her with a bow, his moustache quivering faintly as he assessed her. Madame, your kindness in aiding me is most appreciated, he said, his tone warm yet edged with purpose. A terrible night, but the truth it will not hide forever. Lady Beatrice perched on the settee, her spine a steel rod. Dreadful, Monsieur Poirot. Sir Reginald was a cherished friend. Her eyes strayed to the mantel where a youthful Sir Reginald glared from his portrait, his gaze a silent accusation. Poirot traced her look. A friend to you and his late wife, Clara, I believe. Her fingers tightened on her pearls, the strand clicking softly. Yes, Clara was my dearest confidant. After her death, I tried to ease his loneliness and Charles's, but Sir Reginald was a fortress not easily breached. Poirot said, his voice a gentle lure, and at dinner, Madame did any moment prick your curiosity. A glance, a gesture. She shook her head, then hesitated. Her lips parted. Well, there was something odd. Mr. Archibald Finch stared at the footman during the dessert service, his eyes like hawks on that mousse. I thought it queer the way he watched. Poirot's interest stirred, though his face stayed serene. Watching, you say? Fascinating. And your seat, Madame, did it remain as planned? Her breath caught. No, it didn't. I was to sit by Sir Reginald, but he swapped me with Charles at the last second. Family first, he muttered sharp, almost cross. Poirot's eyes sparkled, sharp indeed. And had you stayed, Madame, what might you have seen or missed? Her handkerchief fluttered to her mouth, muffling a gasp. If I'd been there, perhaps none. None, Poirot cut in firm yet kind. The if is a shadow, Madame. We chase the light. He ushered her out, her unease echoing in his mind. A seat changed by the victim's own hand. Poe. The question gnawed a splinter in the puzzle. In the dining room, Poirot paced before the tablets. Grandeur now a mute witness to treachery. The threads tangled in his thoughts, Charles's debts and the fumbled spoon. Finch's intense stare, Sir Reginald's abrupt command. A pattern loomed faint but growing. Inspector Barnes strode up, his brow furrowed. Anything, Poirot? A seed, Inspector. Poirot replied, his voice even. The little grey cells, they begin to sprout. Barnes snorted. My lads are scouring the kitchen. Poison's got to be somewhere. Barnes, Poirot said, you hunt the weapon, I hunt the will. As Barnes departed, Poirot's gaze returned to Sir Reginald's portraits, eyes taunting. You shifted the board, mon ami, he thought. But did you foresee the checkmate? A soft creak pierced the stillness, the servant's door ajar, swaying as if nudged by an unseen hand. Poirot smiled faintly. A shadow stirs, he mused, but not beyond my reach. He stepped toward it, then paused. His eye caught a glint beneath a crumpled napkin, a silver desert spoon, its bowl smudged with a dark, sticky trace. Poirot's brow arched. A clue, or a cunning feint. The game, he knew, was only beginning. Chapter 5. Secrets and Suspicions. The Library of Sir Reginald. Harrove's mansion stood as a silent sentinel of secrets, its high shelves, groaning under the weight of leather-bound volumes, their spines faded by time. A crackling fire cast flickering shadows across the room, its warmth battling the chill seeping through the storm-battered windows. The air carried the faint musk of old paper and polished ochre scent that clung to Hercule Poirot as he stood near the hearth, his neat figure a portrait of composure. His sharp eyes settled on Archibald Finch, who sat rigid in a wing-back chair, his thin fingers tapping in anxious rhythm on the armrest. His spectacles slipped down his nose with every nervous twitch. "Monsieur Finch," Poirot began, his voice smooth and measured, "you and Sir Reginald were rivals, no? A rivalry that perhaps left a bitter taste." Finch's lips twisted into a grimace, his eyes darting like a hunted animal. "Bitter," he spat. "He stole that Rembrandt from me, rubbed it in my face like a petty tyrant." He pushed his spectacles back with a trembling hand, a gesture he'd repeated thrice. Already Poirot's moustache quivered faintly, sign of his quiet amusement. "And yet you dined here breaking bread with this tyrant. Curious, is it not?" Finch's finger stilled his spectacles, fogging with a sudden breath. "I had business to settle," he muttered. "A trip to Paris looms. Nothing more." "Paris," Poirot mused, his tone light but piercing. "A city of beauty and secrets. What calls you there, monsieur?" Finch's throat bobbed, a bead of sweat glistening on his brow. "A private matter. An acquisition. It's irrelevant to this tragedy." Poirot's smile was polite, yet his eyes gleamed like steel. "At dinner, you watched the footman with great interest. Why?" Finch flinched, his hand jerking to his. "Spectacles. Watched. Nonsense. I was admiring the mousse. Superb presentation." "Superb," Poirot echoed, his voice laced with irony and fatal. He stepped closer, his gaze unrelenting. "Did you see anything unusual on Sir Reginald's plate? A smudge? Chocolate, perhaps?" Finch stammered, his spectacles slipping once more. "Nothing of note." "Mercy, Monsieur Finch," Poirot said, dismissing him with a nod as Finch rose and shuffled out. Poirot's eyes caught a dark stain on the man's cuff where it had grazed the chair. A smear like paint, or perhaps something more sinister. The little grey cells, they stir, he thought. The conservatory offered a stark contrast, its glass walls trembling under the storm's relentless assault. Rain streaked the panes, blurring the lush greenery within. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and exotic blooms. Miss Evelyn Blake sat poised on a wicker chair, her dark hair catching the lamplight, her fingers tracing her notebook with a restless elegance. Poirot approached silently, his polished shoes sinking into the rug. "Mademoiselle Blake," he said, his voice a soft caress, "you chase the truth." "Yes," she said, her green eyes sharp and assessing. "A noble pursuit in a house of shadows. Truth's my game, Miss Poirot, but it's a tricky quarry. Here, everyone's got a mask." Poirot ventured, his tone deceptively mild. "Even about a certain Caravaggio." Her pen paused, her lips curving faintly. "You don't miss much, do you?" "I was chasing a lead thought. It was a forgery, but it's worse. Stolen, a masterpiece tucked away under a fake title." Poirot leaned in, his curiosity alight. "Stolen, most fascinating. And your evidence?" She hesitated, then slid a page across the table with a theatrical sigh. Poirot scanned it, noting a list of names. Victor Marlowe crossed out with a bold stroke. "Why is Monsieur Marlowe dismissed?" he asked, his voice silky. "He clammed up," she said, her tone edged with frustration. "Denied everything. But his eyes betrayed him. He knows more than he's letting on." Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. "And at dinner, Mademoiselle what else did your keen eyes see?" She tapped her pen against her chin. Lady Beatrice was on edge, checking her watch like it was counting down to doomsday. "Time," Poirot murmured, his eyes glinting. "A most intriguing clue, mercy." "Mademoiselle." As he turned to go, a scrap of paper slipped from beneath her, chair fluttering to the floor. Poirot retrieved, each reading the scrolled words. "Meet me at midnight. Urgent. His lips twitched into a faint smile. A secret meeting, or a snare? In the corridor, the storm's distant rumble underscored the mansion's oppressive silence. Poirot's mind hummed with fragments, Finch's stained cuff and evasive mutterings. Miss Blake's tale of a stolen painting. Lady Beatrice's nervous glances. Each was a thread in the tapestry of murder, yet the pattern eluded him. A sudden slam echoed through the house door, followed by the faint whisper of a voice too fleeting to discern. Poirot's smile deepened, his moustache bristling with anticipation. "The plot thickens," he murmured. "But Hercule Poirot thrives in the shadows." He tucked the note into his waistcoat, his thoughts racing. Midnight beckons, and with it, perhaps, the truth. Chapter 6. The Silent Witnesses. The study of Sir Reginald Hargrove's mansion was a tableau of faded opulence, its walls clad in leather-bound ledgers that loomed like mute witnesses to forgotten sins. A lone lamp sputtered a feeble glow, its light devoured by the cavernous shadows. The air carried the bitter tanks of old cigars, a ghost of Sir Reginald's iron will. Beyond the window, rain lashed the panes, and the mist-wreathed garden seemed to shiver in the gloom. Hercule Poirot stood by the hearth, his small, immaculate hands clasped behind his back, his keen eyes locked on Victor Marlowe as he entered. Marlowe moved with a feline elegance, his dark gaze impenetrable, though his fingers betrayed him tapping a slow, restless rhythm on his thigh, a metronome of hidden nerves. "Monsieur Marlowe," Poirot began, his voice soft as a whisper, yet sharp as a pin. "You and Sir Reginald, you shared the fruits of commerce, but not, I suspect, the confidences of friends." Marlowe's lips curled faintly, amusement or disdain. It was hard to tell. "Friendship is a costly indulgence, Monsieur Poirot. Reginald and I dealt in figures, not sentiments." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache quivering with quiet amusement. "And these figures, did they prosper? Or had they perhaps begun to wither?" Marlowe's eyes flickered just for an instant toward the desk, where an open ledger sprawled its columns, marching in orderly rows. "We had our quarrels. Reginald was a tyrant in business. But murder," he spread his hands, the gesture too smooth to trust. "Hardly my style." "No," Poirot's tone was light, almost teasing. "But you broke bread with him that night among his chosen few. One does not dine with a foe without reason." Marlowe's fingers stilled, his jaw tightening. "A negotiation, a trifle, now dust, nothing more." Poirot pressed his voice a velvet snare. "And at dinner did nothing catch your eye? A word, a shadow?" Marlowe stared past him, his voice low. Reginald was on edge, kept glancing at his watch as if time were a noose, and that footman, nervous Claude, dropped a spoon by his chair. Reginald snarled at him like a beast. Poirot's eyes gleamed, though his face remained placid. A watch, a spoon, such trifles yet. They paint the scene. Merci, Monsieur Marlowe. You have lit a small candle in the dark. Marlowe rose his departure, silent as a wraith leaving. Poirot alone with the ledger. One line snagged his eye. Marlowe £10,000, pending a debt, a bribe. Poirot's lips curved faintly. The little grey cells they begin to hum. The servants. Quarters crouched below stairs. Warren of tight corridors and bare boards. The air thick with the sharp bite of cleaning polish and the distant echo of unseen steps. James, the footman, stood in the pantry, his hands twisting a rag his face, pale as chalk his gaze, darting anywhere but Poirot, Monsieur James. Poirot said, his tone gentle yet insistent. You bore the fatal dish, a weighty task for one so green. James nodded, his voice a shaky thread. I'll see it every night for the rest of my life. Sir him clutching his throat, falling like a curse. Poirot stepped closer, his presence acquiring command. Tell me all, every crumb you recall. The smallest mote may unlock the truth. James gulped his hands, faltering. I carried the mousse from the kitchen. Nothing odd there. But Sir Reginald's plate, when I set it down, there was a smudge. A thumbprint in the chocolate, dark and wet. I moved to clean it, but he snapped at me to leave it. Snapped, did he? Poirot's eyes sparkled with interest. And this smudge, was it unique to his plate? Certes, others were. Spotless, it puzzled me, but he'd brook no meddling. Mercy, James, Poirot said, dismissing him with a nod, his mind alight. A smudge, a spoon. Threads in the tapestry. Back in the dining room, dawn crept through the windows, its frail light gilding the table where death had struck. Poirot paced his polished shoes, clicking on the parquet, his thoughts weaving the fragments. Debt, Sir Reginald's watch, the smudged plate. The puzzle danced just out of reach, teasingly near. A soft creak pierced the silenced conservatory door, easing open. Poirot pivoted, glimpsing a shadow dart across the glass whiffed as a phantom. His lips twitched upward. The prey stirs, he whispered, and the net draws tight. His gaze fell to the table where a dessert spoon lay half failed by a napkin, its bowl marred by a faint, dark smear. Poirot's brow arched, his mind racing. One spoon to many, and the plot thickens as he slipped the spoon into his pocket. Hushed murmur drifted from the hall agent, flitting a voice swallowed by the walls. Poirot's smile widened, his moustache bristling with delight. The truth, he mused. It whispers before it roars. Chapter 7. The Web unravels the drawing-room of Sir Reginald. Heroff's mansion lay steeped in the one light of Whodunit's crimson velvet drapes, drawn to tads, though guarding secrets from the prying day. A grandfather clock stood sentinel in the corner, its steady tick-tock slicing through the stillness. Faint haze of cigar smoke clung to the air, spectral remnant of Sir Reginald's domineering presence. The fire in the hearth guttered low, casting long, restless shadows across the faces of the assembled suspects. Charles, hur of his jaw, rigid eyes flickering with a storm of grief and defiance. Lady Beatrice Sinclair, her gloved fingers strangling her pearls. Archibald, Finch perpetually adjusting his slipping spectacles with trembling hands. Miss Evelyn, Blake her journalist's composure cracking at the seams. Victor Marlowe's dark eyes impenetrable. James, the footman, wringing a rag as though it might absolve his pallor. Hercule Poirot stood before the hearth, his diminutive frame a picture of Poise's moustache, waxed too. Perfection, his green eyes, glinting with the quiet triumph of revelation. He clasped his hands behind his back and surveyed the room with the air of a maestro about to conduct his final symphony. Mise Amos, he began, his voice soft yet piercing. We stand at the denouement of a most tragic affair. Sir Reginald Hargrove did not merely die, he was dispatched with a cunning that bespeaks envy, greed, and the shadowed depths of the soul. The clocks, ticking, swelled a relentless pulse. Charles's fists balled at his sides. Lady Beatrice's pearls clicked faintly. Finch's spectacles teetered precariously on his nose. Poirot's gaze swept the assembly, pausing on each face as if peeling back their masks. Let us set the scene, the dining table where Sir Reginald, in a moment of caprice, insisted Monsieur Charles take the seat beside him, displacing Lady Beatrice. A trifle, you think? Charles's voice was taut a wire, about to snap. He said family first. It struck me as odd. He was never one for sentiment. Precisement, Poirot replied, faint smile curling his lips. A small gesture, yet it preserved Lady Beatrice from a fatal taste for the poison cyanide. Swift and silent was not in the mousse. It was upon the spoon. A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. Finch's spectacles clattered to the carpet. James's rag twisted into a tight knot. Poirot produced the dessert spoon, its silver bowl marred by a faint, sinister stain. This spoon coated with death was placed at Sir Reginald's setting by the murderer, ensuring he alone would partake of its venom. Inspector Barnes, looming by the door, furrowed his brow. But how was it tainted, and who could have swapped it unnoticed? Poirot's eyes danced with delight. Ah, Inspector, that is where the little grey cells perform their magic. Observe the clues, the smudge on Sir Reginald's plate, the fallen spoon, and the movements of those present. He turned to James, whose face blanched to the hue of chalk. Monsieur James, you remarked upon a smudge, a thumbprint in the chocolate. You thought it was no chocolate, but the mark of a glove steeped in poison. James sputtered. I didn't. You did not, Poirot said with a gentle nod. You were but an instrument. The killer foresaw Sir Reginald's temper. He would not permit you to wipe the plate. The smudge was a fainter, clever misdirection. Lady Beatrice's voice quivered, her pearls trembling in her grasp. But who could devise such a heartless scheme? Poirot's gaze settled on Finch, who recoiled as if stung. Monsieur Finchu, observed the footman with the intensity of a predator. Were you anticipating something? Finch scrambled for his spectacles, his tone shrill. I merely craved the mousse. It looked divine. Divine indeed, Poirot said, his voice dripping with irony. Your feud with Sir Reginald over that Rembrandt was bitter. Finch's cheeks flamed. Yes, but I'd never know. Poirot cut in sharply. Your hands bear the stains of paint, not poison. You are no killer, merely a man caught in the wrong moment. Finch slumped his spectacles, fogging with relief. Poirot turned to Miss Blake, her pen hovering, but still. Mademoiselle, your pursuit of the Caravaggio scandala, stolen treasure, was bold. Yet your ink stains tell of a story, not a murder. She inclined her head, tension easing from her frame, though her eyes remained keen. Lady Beatrice, Poirot continued, his tone softening. Your nerves, your glances at the clock. You awaited news, perhaps? Her voice faltered. My solicitor, about Clara's estate. I feared Sir Reginald's wrath. A fear unfounded, Poirot said kindly. Your soul is not that of a poisoner. He paused, his eyes locking onto Victor Marlowe, who returned the stare with glacial calm. Monsieur Marlowe, dealings with Sir Reginald, a debt of £10,000 were strained. Marlowe's lips twitched. Debts are paid with gold, not cyanide. I had no cause to kill him, Briar Poirot conceded. Your quarrel was heated, but not the seed of this crime. Charles Hargrove leapt up, his voice roaring with anguish. Then who, Poirot? Who murdered my father? Poirot's expression grew grave, his voice steady as steel. The one who stood to gain all and lose all. The one who foresaw the seating shift, who hovered by the sideboard, who knew the spoon would fall. All eyes swiveled to Charles, whose face drained of blood. Me, you accuse me, Monsieur Poirot said, unrelenting. It was you. A stunned hush blanketed the room, broken only by Lady Beatrice's faint, choked sob. Poirot pressed forward, his words cutting like a blade. You planted the notion of family first in your father's mind, knowing it would place you beside him. You tainted the spoon at the sideboard and engineered the footman's mishap to replace it with the lethal one. James's eyes widened in horror. The spoon, I dropped it because someone bumped me. I thought it an accident. No, Poirot said, his gaze fixed on Charles. It was intent. You jostled James, then, under pretense of aid, slipped the poisoned spoon into place. Charles's face twisted, fury and terror clashing in his eyes. This is madness. You've no evidence. Au compte, Poirot replied, drawing a small vial from his waistcoat. In your haste, you left this in the conservatory, a vial of cyanide, its cap ajar. Charles lunged, but Inspector Barnes's men seized him, wrestling his arms behind his back. Why? Lady Beatrice whispered, tears glistening on her cheeks. He was your father. Charles's laugh was jagged, his eyes wild. Father. He was desperate, hoarding his fortune, ridiculing my debts, poised to disinherit me. I had to act. Poirot shook his head, sorrow etching his features. There is always a choice, monsieur. Yours has woven your own noose. As Charles was hauled away, his shouts ringing through the hall, a heavy silence fell. Inspector Barnes clapped Poirot on the shoulder. Masterful, Poirot, but how did you pierce the veil? Poirot's smile was modest, his eyes aglow. The little grey cells, Inspector. They discern what others missed: a spoon, the seating, the smudgel threads in a tapestry of deceit. Hercule Poirot merely follows them to their end. He turned to the window where dawn's first light pierced the gloom. Yet it is not the triumph that lingers, he mused, but the pity of a son undone by the very greed he decried. Chapter 8. The Final Thread. The Hargrove mansion stood in hushed stillness, the storm's fury now a distant memory. Dawn's first light slipped through the tall windows, casting a pale golden glow across the dining room. The air carried the faint scent of rain-soaked earth, and, beyond the panes, a solitary bird trilled a fragile note of peace after the night's chaos. Hercule Poirot lingered by the grand table, his gloved finger tracing the edge of a wilting orchid, its petal drooping like a mourner's veil. He gazed at the empty chairs, each a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded. A family fractured, he mused, not by fate, but by the quiet poison of greed. His thoughts drifted to Charles Hargrove, now in custody's future, as shattered as the life he had taken. Ah, mon ami, Poirot reflected, what might have been had you chosen differently, Inspector? Barnes's heavy footsteps broke the revelieres. He entered, his face etched with weary respect. Well, Poirot, you've done it again. The Yard owes you a debt, though I suspect you'd say it's all in a day's work. Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint, modest smile. No, Inspector, it is not for the Yard but for justice, and for Sir Reginald, who deserved a kinder end than betrayal by his own blood. Barnes nodded, his tone gruff yet sincere. Still, it's a grim affair. Hard to fathom a son turning on his father like that. Poirot agreed, his voice soft as a sigh. Greed is a thief. It steals not only wealth but the soul, and in the end it leaves only ruin. He turned toward the window where the garden lay bathed in mist, the world, reborn yet tinged with sorrow, but even in darkness there is light. The truth, it always emerges like the dawn after the storm. Barnes gave a dry chuckle, clapping Poirot's shoulder. You're a philosopher, Poirot, as much as a detective. Don't know how you do it. Perhaps, Poirot replied, his eyes twinkling with quiet pride. It is because Hercule Poirot seeks not just the crime but the heart of it, the chaos within the human spirit. As Barnes took his leave, Poirot remained his gaze drawn to the portrait of Sir Reginald above the mantel. The stern eyes seemed softer. Now's, if at peace. Adieu, mon ami, Poirot thought. Your story is told, justice is served. With a final, respectful nod, he turned and left the room, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet, fading into the stillness of the new day. As the storm subsides over Harave, hold the masks, full, and the truth emerges from the shadows. The dinner party. Murder leaves us with a chilling lesson. Deceit can tarnish even the finest silver. If this tale has lingered in your thoughts, dear listeners, consider lending your support to Cafe Tales. Subscribing to this channel unlocks a trove of rewards, badges of distinction, early access to our narratives, 2 extra tales each month, and a quarterly illustrated collection of our most haunting stories. For a one-time gesture, you can fuel our midnight musings through Buy Me a Coffee. Every contribution keeps the lantern burning. Links in the description. Before you depart, share your insights in the comments. Did you pierce the mystery before Poirot? Until we meet again beneath the cloak of night, stay curious and keep your senses keen. Farewell.